reports of any negative incidents. There's also no reports of, well, I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Speaker. I know we're running out of time, but I think if we had more staff, we would see those incidents.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député de La Prairie.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2019 marks an important year for the municipality of St. Philip because it celebrates its 275th anniversary. I humbly admit that I have a soft spot for the municipality because I was born there. What's more, I raised my family on my father's and grandparents' farm. By way of background, Mr. Speaker, it was on November 5th to 1744 that municipality of St. Philippe was officially founded by order of Bishop of Pontbriand, Bishop of Quebec, for the construction of a church, a presbytery, and a cemetery. St. Philippe is a municipality that is 93% agriculture, one that has also been urbanized over the years, so much so that neighborhoods and peaceful residential streets were added, much to everyone's delight. In this anniversary year, I invite everyone in St. Philippe to watch the local newspapers for activities that will take place throughout the year and to continue to use the city's slogan, "So for the future." Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Well, Mr. Speaker, June is Thyroid Awareness Month in Canada, and thyroid disease affects roughly 4 in 10 Canadians from all walks of life and from all political stripes. Many notable men and women have been diagnosed with the disease, including U.S. President George H.W. Bush, First Lady Barbara Bush and their dog Maggie, U.S. Senators Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, John F. Kennedy Jr., and the former member for Trinity Spadina, Olivia Chow. Now, I've been vocal about my own experience with Graves' disease to encourage Canadians to get to know the early warning signs because only half of those with thyroid disease ever get properly diagnosed. If treated early, thyroid disease has a very high cure rate, but if untreated, it can lead to very serious health complications, including severe vision impairment and joint problems. Mr. Speaker, I encourage Canadians to visit thyroid.ca, educate themselves on the early warning signs, and visit their doctors to confirm a diagnosis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Saint-Boniface, Saint-Vital.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in the House once again to recognize a residents' association in my riding of Saint-Boniface, Saint-Vital.
Is a small but vibrant community that was built some 65 years ago. It is well represented by an active residents' association. Chaired by Chris Chipman, the volunteer-led Niagara Park Residents Association organizes many family-friendly activities throughout the year. A winter sleigh ride, an outdoor ice rink, pizza in the park, movie night in the park, and an annual picnic.
It's always a pleasure to attend events organized in Niagara Park and to meet with residents from the neighborhood.
The Residents Association is another great example of how dedicated volunteers help build inclusive and dynamic communities. Merci. Thank you.
Oh.
L'honorable député de Trois.
The honourable member for Trois-Rivières. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a few days' time, I'll finish my second term in this House thanks to the support of the people of Trois-Rivières. Of course, I want to thank them, but I also want to take this opportunity to demonstrate the relevance of the work of an opposition member. While we're never photographed with the big checks, the fact remains that without the hard work of my entire team, along with the mobilization of citizens and various economic stakeholders in the region, we would not have obtained what we did, the $30 million in support for pyrite victims, the resumption of the study on the quality of concrete that should enable victims of the grey zone to come out ahead, the HFT, which will be announced imminently, I suspect, compensation for thalidomide victims, investments in Trois-Rivières that would make a backbench MP in the government blush, international visibility for Trois-Rivières thanks to the francophonie, and I'll stop there out of a lack of time. The mandate given to me to make the government accountable, to serve Trois-Rivières, and to propose alternatives to those presented by a majority government elected by a minority of voters. I believe I can say mission accomplished, and see you next time if that's what the people of Trois-Rivières want. The honourable member for Sackville-Preston-Chessy-Cook.
Speaker, I rise today to give an update to the House on the construction of the Sackville-Bedford-Burnside connector. This project will improve safety and travel time for commuters and commercial traffic between Burnside and Sackville. The construction of the connector has already begun, and over 500 jobs will be created. Over 40,000 vehicles travel between Sackville and Burnside each day and cause extensive traffic backlog. I was proud to attend with the Prime Minister the announcement of our government's investment of $86 million to address these issues. After 30 years of planning, the important addition of the 100 Series highway network is a great example of the partnership between the provincial and federal government. I look forward to sharing more updates with my constituents as we move forward on this very important and successful project of our government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Manning.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister continues to fearmonger Canadians by picking fights with the provinces over national unity. What he doesn't understand is that he is the threat to Canadian unity. Whether it's Pierre Elliott Trudeau or the current Prime Minister, history tells us that wherever there's a Prime Minister in the office of this family, our nation is at risk. Canadians deserve more than from this Prime Minister. Someone who will not divide Canadians by killing pipeline project and force Canadians to pay a job-killing carbon tax. Canada's Conservatives will not support Bill C-69. Instead, a government under our Conservative leader will. First, repeal this bill from when we form government in October. Unite Canadians and get Canada's energy sector back to work, all while helping all Canadians get ahead. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, I want to recognize HoC Mental Health Association in my riding of Scarborough Agincourt for receiving the Advancing Minority Mental Health Award from the American Psychiatric Association Foundation. They are the first ever agency outside of the United States to receive this award in recognition of their efforts to increase public awareness and provide comprehensive mental health care for underserved minorities. I am proud to be part of a government that prioritizes mental health and has made a historic $5 billion investment in mental health initiatives across the country. We've reopened Veteran Affairs offices to increase mental health supports for veterans. We supported a pan-Canadian suicide prevention service with trained responders providing 24/7 crisis support. And we have invested in home care for seniors and access to community-based mental health services, particularly for children and youth. Mental health affects everyone. Our government is determined to continue providing Canadians the mental health support they need so that they can lead healthy lives. Thank you.
Le député de Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Cerebral Palsy Association of Quebec is celebrating its 70th anniversary this year. It has been chaired for 20 years by Mr. Joseph Coury, an exceptional and passionate leader. I'm privileged to have its head office in my riding of Saint-Jean. As Member of Parliament, it's important to show solidarity with people with cerebral palsy. It's our responsibility to raise awareness among the population and the various levels of government of the urgent needs and respect for those who suffer daily from cerebral palsy and their families, who are also affected. I would like to thank the association for its commitment and exemplary contribution. Opération Papillon Vert, Operation Green Butterfly, launched this year as a concrete example of the work being done to help people with cerebral palsy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer Mountain View.
Mr. Speaker, last night Canadians witnessed a spectacle where this Liberal government chose to support competing oil-producing nations over Canadian resource developers. They ignored the pleas of 9 provincial premiers, First Nations and territorial leaders, and millions of Canadians by shutting down debate on C-69. How many hospitals will be built in Canada through our purchases of Saudi oil? How many social programs will be financed from our friends from Nigeria? And how many environmental environmental causes, and human rights efforts that Canadians hold dear will be jeopardized by these Liberals shutting in the resource expertise of the world's most responsible energy producers. By following the misguided dogma of this Prime Minister, Liberals will be following him into the political abyss. The only way to truly protect our environment, to give certainty to job creators, and to ensure Canada's strong social fabric is to make this divisive Liberal leader a single-use Prime Minister. On October 21st, Canadians will make that choice.
The honourable member for Dartmouth Cole Harbour.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor Dartmouth Cole Harbour. There has never been a better time to live in Dartmouth. Our city is vibrant, and you can feel a deep sense of pride. It's an absolute honor making sure our community is supported. Our government invested in daylighting the Sawmill River, revitalizing Sullivan's Pond and the Canal Greenway Park. We invested in our incredible paddling and rowing community. The Legion, Cole Harbour Place, the Sportsplex, the Dartmouth North Community Centre, NSCC, the Beasley Basketball Courts, the Fairbanks Centre, and the Shubenacadie Canal. Mr. Speaker, we invested in the Dartmouth Ferry Terminal, in new buses and infrastructure. We've made sure that shipbuilding jobs stay in Nova Scotia. Ships stay here. And we've invested in small businesses and nonprofits across the riding so that they can grow and create more jobs. Mr. Speaker, I'm so proud to call the City of Lakes my home. Thank you to my constituents for putting their support, their faith, and their trust in me. And from the Natal Day Parade to the Cole Harbour Heritage Festival, I encourage Canadians from all across the country to visit Dartmouth Cole Harbour.
L'honorable député d'Archambault.
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-La Petite Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Young families, seniors, small and medium-sized businesses, and the middle class can count on our government. Through the Canada Child Benefit, we have provided nearly $6 million to more than 9,000 families in my riding. Through the New Horizons program, we have invested more than $400,000 to improve the lives of seniors. We have made historic investments to connect people to high-speed internet. And through an Investing in Canada plan, we have invested $5 million in infrastructure projects. I'm proud of the work our government is doing to help the middle class and those working hard to join it. I wish you all a good summer, and I look forward to seeing you at the many activities in the lovely riding of Argenteuil-La Petite Nation.
North Okanagan, Shuswap.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alberta is starting to see some relief with the lowest fuel prices in the country because they no longer have a carbon tax. Meanwhile, in BC, we're hammered with a carbon tax, driving fuel prices so high that people are actually burning more fuel. They're driving longer distances to cross the border, often sitting idling at long border crossing lineups just to buy cheaper U.S. gas. At the same time, creating a safety hazard by filling up jerry cans and putting in the back of passenger vehicles, basically converting SUVs into fuel tankers, all to avoid paying into the Liberals' carbon tax plan. Now the Parliamentary Budget Officer reports that the carbon tax would need to increase in some provinces by 5 times the current punishing rate to over $100 per ton, driving up fuel prices another 23 cents per litre. When will the Prime Minister and his Environment Minister stop punishing Canadians for just trying to get to work and admit they don't have an environmental plan, they only have a tax plan?
For Don Valley West.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank you, the table officers, and all the pages for your tremendous work ensuring the effectiveness of the 42nd Parliament. It's been an honor to serve in Ottawa for the last 4 years, and I look forward to 4 more years. We're making a difference here, lowering taxes on the middle class and for small businesses, creating over 1 million jobs since 2015, lifting over 300,000 children out of poverty with the Canada Child Benefit, ensuring over 800,000 others out of poverty, and they have a chance to make a difference of their own in this country, helping our world's most vulnerable while welcoming newcomers every day to make Canada stronger. Investments in infrastructure, transit, renewable energy, a national housing strategy, and our climate plan are all ensuring that we will live better, healthier lives. Canadians elected a government who would, like Toronto's Raptors, be champions. And we're delivering, making a difference for the people of Don Valley West and all of Canada.
Here, here.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 5th of June, a tribute was paid to someone from Louisville and to Mr. Anthony Latry was honored. He has drawn caricatures. They have been featured everywhere. He's had great influence in his community. He was put into the Badminton Hall of Fame in 1994. During his birthday, he was received another award. He paid tribute to Mr. Latry. We are very proud of you, sir. You are a great person from my riding.
The Honourable Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Mr. Speaker, one of the most common complaints I hear from my constituents is the rising cost of fuel. All across this country, Canadians are struggling to pay this government's carbon tax while trying to avoid insolvency. Parents are having to make hard choices between heating their homes and after-school activities for their kids. Now, the Parliamentary Budget Officer is reporting that it's going to get a lot worse for families. In order to meet Paris targets, every Canadian, no matter where they live, will have to pay 5 times what they pay now. And if you thought gas prices are high now, try adding another 23 cents of Liberal carbon taxes on top of that. The Prime Minister never came clean with the true cost of his carbon scheme, and now we know why. The Prime Minister has no plan to lower emissions. His only plan is another cash grab, which is already hurting overtaxed Canadians. When will the Prime Minister admit he made a mistake, kill his carbon tax, and take real action on climate change?
The Honourable Member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, at a YMCA in 1891, a Canadian named James Naismith invented the game of basketball. Yesterday night, 128 years later, a Canadian team, our Toronto Raptors, brought the NBA championship home. Mr. Speaker, there were doubters and there were cynics, but there was also steely resolve. The resolve of die-hard fans and ones more recently on the bandwagon who got on board in Jurassic Parks from coast to coast to coast in this country and beyond it. They got on board to cheer the most diverse team representing the most diverse city for the most diverse nation on earth. From Kawhi to Kyle, from Pascal to Serge, from Mark to the indefatigable, toothless Freddie V, this team, our Raptors, showed basketball fans around the world we don't understand the meaning of the word quit, and that when we sing about being the true North, strong and free, we mean it. Thank you, Raps, for an incredible run in what is going to be an amazing parade on Monday. Let's go, Raptors! Let's go, Raptors!
I'm not quite sure how that fits in the rule book, but I'll check that later. Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Member for Carleton.
The Parliamentary Budget Officer proved yesterday that the Liberals' carbon tax cannot achieve what is promised unless it is twice as high as they have admitted. I quote, $50 per ton after 2022, there will be a shortfall. We won't be able to meet the country's targets for greenhouse gas reduction. The only way to do it, double the promised price to over $100 a ton, which translates into an increased price of gas of 23 cents a litre. Will the government admit that its carbon tax, while it makes no sense, costs 23 cents?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Honourable Member is seeking to mislead Canadians in order to scare them into supporting his party. The analysis that he refers to by the Parliamentary Budget Officer presumes that no further measures will be implemented to reduce emissions over the next 11 years and doesn't factor in certain measures that have already been announced or being implemented now, such as the largest investment in public transit in the history of Canada, such as new subsidies to make electric vehicles more affordable, or advancements in innovation legislation that will actually improve carbon sequestration technologies. Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives would be honest with themselves, they'd realize that our plan is going to make life more affordable for Canadian households at the same time we bring our emissions down.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Actually, the Parliamentary Budget Officer took into consideration every single policy lever that the current government is using and said, with those policies, the country will miss its Paris targets by 80 million megatons per year, and that the only way to change that is to increase the carbon tax 5 times what it is now and twice what the government has admit at a cost of 23 cents, painful cents, a litre for gasoline. Why were the Liberals attempting to hide this higher tax until after the election?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, the report of the Parliamentary Budget Officer does not represent the government's agenda going into the next election. We have been very clear that when it comes to our plan to put a price on pollution, the price is going to increase to $50 a tonne until 2022, at which time the policy will be reviewed. I'd be happy to speak to the honourable member's constituents, who should know by now that 8 out of 10 households that the honourable member represents will be left better off as a result of our plan. If he doesn't want to accept my opinion on this piece, I'd point him to the previous report of the same Parliamentary Budget Officer, who indicates that only the wealthiest 20% would pay more and that 80% of that member's constituents will be better off at the end of the year. I look forward to seeing him on the doorsteps campaigning on a promise to take $307 from a typical family of 4 in his constituency.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Well, their promise that the check was in the mail was never kept.
Yeah.
It was not as advertised. We now know that the rebates were a third smaller and the tax will be twice as high as advertised. So smaller rebates than promised and higher taxes than admitted. Yeah. These facts are now known to us. We now know, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, that for the Liberals to keep their own promises, they would have to increase the tax to a rate that would cost the average family over $1,000 a year in Ontario, including gas prices that are 23 cents higher. Why did they try to cover it up before the election?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I find it entertaining that the honourable member is putting so much stock in the PBO's report when he won't even submit his own party's platform for consideration because he's hiding the true cost to Canadians. When it comes to the size of the rebate, we've said the entire time a typical family of 4 in the province of Ontario would receive a rebate of $307. That is as true today as it was when we first announced our plan. He's confusing statistics by saying the average payout, which pertains to a family of smaller size, is different than a family of 4. This is simple arithmetic. I'd be happy to walk him through it after question period, but I sense after a few months he's choosing not to listen because he knows our plan is the right plan.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, we know well that for the last 3 years, the Liberals have tried to make Canadians believe that the Liberal carbon tax would allow them to meet the Paris targets and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's false, Mr. Speaker. And the Parliamentary Budget Office concluded that yesterday. They said that the government won't meet the Paris targets, but worse, if they want to meet them, they would have to increase the carbon tax by 5 times. Will the Liberals be honest with Canadians and say which increase they're going to impose on Canadians if, unfortunately, they're re-elected in 6 months? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, in the Honourable Member's own province of Quebec, I note that they have a price on pollution and our system does not apply. I'd be curious if he'd go out and say that the province doesn't have the authority to put the price on pollution that exists and is supported by members of his province. The Honourable Member knows in the provinces where the federal backstop applies, 8 out of 10 families are better off at the end of the year. Mr. Speaker, this is not some Liberal partisan plan. We can look to last year's Nobel Prize winner in economics who's developed this sort of approach. We can look to Mark Cameron, Stephen Harper's former director of policy, who's indicated that families will be better off. We can look at Doug Ford's chief budget advisor, who testified before the Senate in this Parliament, saying the number one thing we can do to move towards a low-carbon economy is to put a price on pollution.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent.
Again, so I will have to answer in English this time, because based on the Quebec experience, yes, we have a cap-and-trade system in Quebec, but what are the results? What are the results, Mr. Speaker? Zero reducing of emission gas. This is the result when we tax people. No reduction of emission. This is the Quebec experience. This is the truth. This is the facts. This is the science. So, Mr. Speaker, may the Minister for once be clear with Canadians. Can they explain how much they will raise the taxes for Canadians?
The Honourable Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, if the honourable member would listen to the details of our plan, he'd realize as the price on pollution increases approaching 2022, so does the rebate. So the more the time goes on, the cost does not increase, but the rebate to families increases.
I just want to interrupt the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent asked a question, and I'm sure he wants to hear an answer. And with all the chatter, we're depriving him from hearing that. So I'll let the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary... Order. Very good. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, 19 seconds to continue.
Mr. Speaker, in the remaining time I have, I'll reiterate the point that anybody who has any equity in this conversation knows that the number one thing we can do to reduce emissions is to put a price on pollution. But we found a way to make life more affordable at the same time by returning the rebate directly to households. Mr. Speaker, it marries the theme of our government, which is to make life more affordable for those who need it. Whether it's the Canada Child Benefit, the middle class tax cut, or the price on pollution, we're doing the right thing for our environment and making life easier for families.
The Honourable Member for Churchill, Coeitanook-Askey.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians want bold action on climate change, and they know that there's no time to waste. The NDP has called on this government to invest in green jobs and green energy. But what did this Prime Minister do? He bought fridges and pipelines for his billionaire pals. 4 years in power, and all we've seen from this liberal government are more subsidies for big oil and their pipelines. This isn't how you save the environment. So when will the Liberals stop siding with the big polluters so we can win the fight against climate change?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, with respect, I have great appreciation for the NDP's desire to do something about their environment. It's too bad that their desire doesn't match their ability to think out a plan that makes sense. If you look at the Eco-Fiscal Commission's review of the NDP's plan, what they've actually said is their measures for big emitters will actually do nothing to reduce emissions and will hurt the Canadian economy at the same time. You can tell that they lack the thoughtfulness that the climate debate demands when you look at the honourable member's question, which confuses fridges for refrigerants, which are actually one of the fastest growing causes of climate change globally. Mr. Speaker, I share their desire to do something about climate change, but the difference is we thought about how to make it happen.
The Honourable Member for Churchill, Coeitanook-Askey.
Mr. Speaker, people in our north and across the country are forced to make impossible choices because of the high cost of medication. It is inconceivable that in 2019, in Canada, people have to choose between buying food and medication. Liberals have been putting pharmaceutical and insurance companies in the driver's seat, but the HoC Advisory Board is clear. Canadians need a universal, public, single-payer pharmacare. This is what the NDP has been pushing for. Enough of the half measures and the favors to their corporate friends. Will the Liberal government implement universal, comprehensive, public pharmacare? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. Our government is absolutely committed to making sure that every Canadian has access to a national pharmacare program, and the work is absolutely underway. In Budget 2019, we announced funding $35 million for the creation of a Canadian drug agency, and also $1 billion to address the situation of rare diseases. We will continue to work with our partners on the ground, provinces and territories, Indigenous leaders, and the healthcare sector, as we want to make sure that we make pharmacare a reality for all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, Dr. Hoskin's report could not be clearer. We need a universal public pharmacare program. And in fact, that's one of the NDP's firm commitments. People should not have to split pills to make their prescription medication last longer. Instead of listening to ordinary people, successive Conservative and Liberal governments have stood with big insurance companies. Mr. Speaker, will the Liberal government commit, like we did, to setting up a universal public pharmacare program as of next year?
Honourable
Minister of Health. Again, Mr. Speaker, I will be very clear that our government is committed to ensuring that all Canadians have access to a pharmacare program. That work is underway. In Budget 2019, we announced $35 million to create the Canadian Medication Agency, and we also want to make sure that we're investing $1 billion for medication for rare diseases. We will continue to work with provinces and territories to ensure that all Canadians have access to a national pharmacare program. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives and Liberals are waging a war of words over the carbon tax, young people are marching in the streets calling for climate action. We need political will and political leadership to deal with the urgency of climate change. The Conservatives and Liberals have shown that they have neither. At the NDP, we have the courage to act, and we have an ambitious plan to start the transition toward green energies. Will the government commit to ending oil subsidies and starting the shift toward renewable energies?
Well, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I have enormous respect for the young people who are advocating for more climate action. I wish politicians of all stripes would pay heed to the message that they're sending us, which is we need to take action. We need to take action now. The NDP are advocating for plans that we started implementing 3 years ago, not just putting a price on pollution, but moving towards having 90% of our electricity generated from non-emitting resources by 2030, like making the largest investment in public transit in the history of our country, like making record investments in energy efficiency and green technology. With respect to fossil fuel subsidies, we've already phased out 8 of 9 that exist in the tax code. When it comes to their plan to eliminate all fossil fuel subsidies immediately, they've forgotten to consider that it actually provides electricity to northern communities and other...
The Honourable Member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
But, Mr. Speaker, he's not going to actually meet the targets. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed what Conservatives have been saying all along. The Liberal carbon tax is a cash grab, not a climate change plan. The Prime Minister has tried to hide the real cost of his carbon tax, but the PBO has laid out the truth. The cost of gasoline would rise by at least 25 cents per litre. When Canadians are trying to get ahead, not just get by, will the Prime Minister tell Canadians how much the full and final cost of this carbon tax will be?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, to repeat an earlier answer, the analysis laid out in the report doesn't consider certain measures that will be implemented in the next 11 years, and in fact leaves out certain measures that have already been announced, such as our investments in public transit, our subsidy for zero-emissions vehicles, or advancement in carbon sequestration technology. With respect to the cost of our plan to put a price on pollution, I'm pleased to advise the Honourable Member that 8 out of 10 families that live in the riding she represents will be better off. They will have already received a climate action incentive of $307, and that's going to climb year over year. Mr. Speaker, it'll be curious to see how that member campaigns in the next election with a promise to take that money from her constituents.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, that's simply not true, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, half of Canadians are about $200 away from being able to pay their bills each month. And yet the Liberals' carbon tax is going to put a painful 23 cents a litre increase in the price of gasoline, and that'll do nothing to help climate change. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have said they want to help the middle class, but they're punishing them and those hoping to join them. Why?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we now see Conservative MP after Conservative MP repeating false points in this chamber. It's entirely inappropriate. When it comes to the issue of affordability, I note that the Parliamentary Budget Officer previously confirmed...
I don't know what it is about the Parliamentary Secretary for the Environment, but he keeps getting help from the other side when he's trying to answer a question that the member for Sarnia-Lambton wants an answer for. So I just want everybody, maybe let the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary answer his question, and we'll keep it down so she can hear the answer.
Mr. Speaker, I know
the Honourable,
hurt, but the truth...
For everything to calm down. Okay, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, on occasion the truth can hurt, but it's important we say it as loud as we can, no matter how many times it takes. And the truth is that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed that 8 out of 10 families will be better off. If they were concerned about affordability, I'm curious why they voted against a tax cut for 9 million middle-class Canadians and voted in favour of maintaining a favourable tax system for the wealthiest 1%. When they had an opportunity to support the Canada Child Benefit, which put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 families, they voted against that.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's the Liberals who are saying things that aren't true. After having discredited the United Nations, they're continuing to question the conclusions of scientists and several environmental organizations, as well as the Environment Commissioner, even the Parliamentary Budget Officer, an independent officer of the House. Yesterday, the PBO confirmed that the Liberals' current plan is not sufficient to meet the Paris targets. When it comes to the environment, the Liberals are misleading Canadians. Why is this government again failing to tell the truth?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, it would be easier to take criticism from a member of a party who actually has advanced a climate plan to date. They refuse to, and they refuse to put their plan before the parliamentary budget officer. You want to see what a conservative climate plan looks like? Look at Doug Ford, who's dismantled flood protections and showed up saying, what the heck's going on here? When we actually know, when you look at it, it's going to be less effective to reduce emissions and will be twice expensive for households. I'd suggest that the member, instead of attacking our plan, which is credible, he talks to some of his caucus colleagues who seem not to understand that climate change is real, who say that global warming is simply body heat coming off humans, who refuse to acknowledge the science. When you look at the IPCC or Canada's Changing Climate Report, it's real and we have a duty to...
The Honourable Member for Pont-le-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate to hear this from the Liberals. This government is out of touch and has no credibility when it comes to the environment. What planet are the Liberals living on? They're the only ones who believe that their plan will meet the Paris targets. I would encourage the Liberals to return to Earth and to take action now to protect our planet. The Parliamentary Budget Officer said yesterday that Canadians will have to pay 5 times more than what the current tax is currently at if we want to meet the Paris targets. Canadians deserve the truth. So why hide it, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I'd point the honourable member to an article just this past week where his leader refused to acknowledge the connection between severe weather events and climate change. The deputy leader of the Conservative Party tweeted out a quote to a similar effect. Mr. Speaker, he has caucus colleagues who point to snowbanks in Saskatchewan in February as proof that climate change isn't real. He's got members who don't want to abide by the Paris Agreement, yet he has the audacity to criticize us on our plan to meet those targets. The fact is we will meet our targets because failure is not an option. This is the greatest challenge of our generation, and we found a way to do it that makes life more affordable for families.
The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has released a scathing report that the Liberals will not meet their Paris climate change targets. That is unless they raise the price at the pump by 23 cents a litre. Now, the Liberals have promised that they won't raise this until after the election. No kidding. They're going to wait until after the election when they no longer need Canadian votes, but they still need their money. When will the Liberals finally come clean and tell Canadians the true cost of their carbon tax plan?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member represents part of the province of Alberta, which I called home for a number of years. I'm pleased to share with the honourable member that the province he represents will have constituents next year receiving a climate action incentive of $888 at tax time, which is more than they are going to pay as a result of our plan to put a price on pollution. If he puts so much stock in the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report, I would challenge him to speak to his leader about putting their party platform so they can understand the cause. If he wants to look a little further, I can point him to the prior report of the PBO, which indicated that 8 out of 10 families will have more money in their pockets. I don't know why this is the case, but the Conservatives seem allergic to money for
the honourable member for Halberton Court, the Lakes Rock.
Mr. Speaker, the Environment Minister said that she will make her Paris targets, but the PBO has confirmed that the only way the Liberals' carbon tax will work is if they charge 23 cents a litre more for gasoline. Life is already too expensive. Canadians are already struggling to pay their heating bills and buy groceries. Clearly, this punishing tax plan will severely hurt families and seniors, particularly those on fixed incomes. When will the Liberals finally admit that their carbon tax is not an environmental plan, it's a tax plan?
Well, Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I find the question rich coming from a member who decided to hide the fact that the climate action incentive exists to a publication to his constituents, which was designed to tell them how they can maximize their tax refund. The fact is, families of 4 in Ontario receive $307 this year, and that rebate will grow over time. Mr. Speaker, it seems as though they're putting their fingers in their ears and saying, we don't want to hear the truth because the truth is not helpful to them, because they, every time they have the chance, vote against measures that pour more money in the pockets of Canadian households. We found the most effective way to reduce emissions. We found a way to make life more affordable, and every time they seem to vote against measures that have that impact.
Before I go to the next question, I just want to remind some members who have very strong voices that carry very well, just to be mindful of the strength of their voice, because it kind of drowns out when we're trying to hear the answer. The honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, the Hoskins Advisory Council is clear. Canadians need public pharmacare, yet this government refuses to commit to it. People are making impossible choices when it comes to the prescription drugs they need. Choices like paying their rent or filling a prescription, cutting pills to make a bottle last longer, or skipping their medicine altogether. People are getting sicker and dying. A simple question deserves a clear answer from the Health Minister. Will the Liberals implement universal, comprehensive, single-payer pharmacare or not?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we agree that Canadians should not have to choose between putting food on their table and paying for prescription medication. And that is why that we are committed to ensuring that all Canadians, and I say all Canadians, have access to a national pharmacare program. And the work has been underway for a few years. The first thing that we've done, we've been doing some work to lower the cost of drugs in this country. And in Budget 2019, we announced $35 million to ensure that we have a Canadian drug agency that is going to help us make this plan a reality. Mr. Speaker, we are deeply committed to ensuring that all Canadians have the prescriptions that they deserve.
Honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Well, that's what the Liberals said in 1997, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 11,500 Canadians died from opioid overdoses between 2016 and 2019. Opioid deaths have risen every single year of this Liberal government's mandate. This is a true epidemic. Now, the Liberals say they're doing everything possible, but they are not. We need a national declaration of public health emergency, federal funding of overdose prevention sites, more investment in treatment, and an end to the cause of this carnage, which is a poisoned street supply. Why are the Liberals refusing to take these overdue measures that will save lives?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the numbers that were announced yesterday are not just numbers. These are brothers, sisters, they're our neighbours, and our government is taking action. We've invested more than $350 million to ensure that more treatments is available to Canadians. We've also introduced harm reduction as a key pillar to our drug strategy. And also, Mr. Speaker, we've approved more than 40 supervised consumption sites, and we recognize that supervised consumption sites save lives. We will continue to work with our partners on the ground to ensure that we do all that we can to turn the tide on this national public health crisis. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for North Okanagan-Shuswap. I'm sorry.
The Liberal attack on the energy sector has crippled Alberta, and it's impacting BC. After 50 years, a houseboat company in Sicamous announced that it is shutting down, affecting 150 employees. The mayor of Sicamous blamed the downturn in the Alberta economy and the pipeline dispute for having taken a toll on the community. Today, the Liberals are announcing a Western economic growth strategy, as if they haven't done enough damage already. When will the Liberals end their attack on the West?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity to highlight some of the investments that are happening in Western Canada. The $40 billion single private sector investment in the LNG sector. $9 billion of investment in petrochemical sector right in Alberta, in my home province. And moving forward on Enbridge Line 3, which is almost completed on the Canadian side, advocating for moving forward on Enbridge, on the Keystone XL pipeline, as well moving forward in the right way, fixing the process on Trans Mountain pipeline expansion.
Brilliant. Honourable Member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's been a tough week for Alberta here in Ottawa. The Prime Minister has rammed through his anti-pipeline, anti-energy Bill C-69 and 48 and announced a carbon tax for the province of Alberta. These attacks are driving investment and opportunity out of the province. Without a hint of irony, this very morning, these same Liberals are announcing their Western Canada job strategy. It's like hiring the arsonist to rebuild the house after they lit the fire. When will the Liberals realize that the only growth strategy that will work when it comes to these Liberals is if they end their attack on Canada's energy sector?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
It is very interesting coming from a member who is from Alberta not to acknowledge that the good work that is being done to support the energy sector. We are the government that are creating conditions for private sector investment to happen in the energy sector. $40 billion investment in one single project. It's the largest private sector investment happening in our history, Mr. Speaker. $9 billion in petrochemical sector that will create thousands of jobs for Alberta workers. We are something we're very, very proud of.
We should be. Honourable member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, Alberta has been shown nothing but disdain from this Liberal government for the last 3.5 years. The Liberals continue their assault on the energy sector, and last night they shut down debate on Bill C-69 that has devastated many of my constituents. People have lost their businesses, their jobs, their homes. They've lost hope, and some have even taken their own lives. When everyone is telling the Environment Minister that her plan is a disaster, she chooses to ignore this advice. Everyone has been repeating it so long and saying it so loud. Why won't she listen?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, Bill C-69 puts in better rules that allows good projects to move forward in a way that respects the environment and also allows Canadians to participate in the process. We are fixing a system that led to a number of large projects failed and challenged in the federal court because Stephen Harper brought in changes in 2012 that gutted the environmental protection, that restricted the ability of Canadians to participate in a regular process. We firmly believe that Bill C-69 will allow...
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
But, Mr. Speaker, these Liberals have put hundreds of thousands of Albertans out of work with brutal consequences, rising bankruptcies, family breakdowns, substance abuse, crime, suicides, a loss of hope and dreams, and that hurts all of Canada. But the Liberals are ramming through laws to block oil exports, kill resource projects, and will make everything more expensive with their carbon tax. And after only 1 hour of debate on hundreds of amendments Liberals forced through There Are No More Pipelines Bill C-69, even though 9 provinces and all territories want major changes, why are the Liberals so relentless in their attacks on Albertans?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, let me highlight that for 10 years, the previous Harper government failed to build a single pipeline to get our resources to non-U.S. markets. We are changing that. The ability of our energy sector to grow is very important that we are able to expand our global markets. Let me highlight another investment. We have invested more money in Alberta in infrastructure in the last 4 years than Stephen Harper government did in 10 years. We are delivering for Albertans and we will continue to do so.
The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, next Tuesday we're expecting the final decision regarding the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. Well, we fear the Liberals will impose this pipeline on BC. Coastal communities like mine are still hopeful the Liberals will make the right decision in their interests instead of siding with the interests of profitable big oil companies. There's still time for the Liberals to do the right thing for our air, our water, and for our coast. On June 18th, will the government listen to the voice of coastal communities and cancel the Trans Mountain Expansion Project? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we respect and appreciate diversity of opinion among Indigenous communities on energy sector development, right? And we are listening to them carefully. We engaged with them in a very meaningful two-way conversation. We are following the direction of the Federal Court of Appeal to move forward on this project in the right way. As the honourable member knows, that we are set to make a decision on this project by June 18th.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, student debt is a huge burden for so many young Canadians. Stacey from Victoria tells me there's so much interest accumulating on her student loan, she can't pay the principal of the debt. She feels she just can't get ahead. People like Stacey have been working for years and still can't pay their debt. Getting an education shouldn't mean getting an unmanageable debt. The NDP government in British Columbia has eliminated the interest on student loans. Will this government follow BC's lead and eliminate the interest on Canada's student loans?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, the member would know that it was our government who invested in opportunities for students to gain that education. We doubled the amount of low-interest grants to all Canadians, to part-time students as well as full-time students. We've increased the amount of support in those non-repayable grants. We've also the students, before they, until they're making at least $25,000 a year, have a holiday on repayment. Mr. Speaker, we're doing what's been asked of us as a government to help support student access.
The
Honourable Member for Sackville-Preston Chesapeake. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Harper Conservatives gave checks to millionaires. Our government created the Canada Child Benefit. The Harper Conservatives gave tax credits to the rich. Our government introduced the new parental sharing benefit. The difference between these policies is clear for middle-class families. They receive nearly $51,000 more per child under this government than under the Conservatives. Could the Minister of Families comment on how this government supports middle-class families? The Honourable Minister of Families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I'm happy to answer the question of my colleague. He's absolutely right. We were elected to grow the middle class and our economy, and he's right. Our plan per child under 18 years of age gives them nearly $51,000 more than under the Conservatives. And he's right, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to invest in the Canada Child Benefit, in housing, in public transit, and we're going to continue to grow the middle class and our economy. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, next week the Prime Minister is meeting with the U.S. President, and I'm sure that President Trump has no time to talk for talk's sake. The U.S. President also has a problem with illegal migrants at his borders. He understands our situation. The Prime Minister hasn't done anything to date to renegotiate the safe third country agreement, and this would be a golden opportunity to do so. Will the Prime Minister renegotiate this agreement, yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives want to pretend they want to protect our borders. They want to change the safe third country agreement, but the record clearly shows the opposite. They cut millions from security agencies, and for 10 years, they didn't have discussions with the U.S. to change this agreement to improve our borders. We have already had discussions about the same third country agreement. We're investing $1 million to give the necessary resources to protect our borders, and we saw a 47% in the number of reductions. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. It's his Prime Minister who created his problem with his famous tweet. And in addition, people in the U.S. right now and elsewhere in the world, they come to the U.S. with a passport, and they show up here with no papers. So when will the Prime Minister finally come clean and admit that there's an issue here with the third safe country agreement? First, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to apologize on behalf of all the children and young people who show up at our borders without a passport. Our government, Mr. Speaker, is the one that was able to reduce the number of asylum requests at the border by 47%. Unlike the previous government, we invested to give the RCMP and others the resources to do their work, to make sure no one gets into Canada without having fully checked for records.
Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, last night I received more notices of more job closures and mill closures in my riding in northern BC. The Liberals' inaction on softwood and their failed policy is leading to thousands of job losses right across our province of British Columbia. We already have the highest gas prices in North America. Another 25 cents a litre will be the final nail in the coffin. An increase in gas tax will only fuel more job losses for our forestry industry. These are real people, real jobs, jobs? Why do they continue to pound Canadians with a job-killing carbon tax that won't even reduce emissions?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Take no lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to softwood lumber. Let me just point out that it was the Conservative example of accepting quotas on softwood lumber that stiffened our spines and stiffened the spines of the steel sector in refusing to accept tariffs or quotas on steel and aluminum. The Conservatives are prepared to capitulate, accept crummy trade deals. We are not.
Before the Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil, order on both sides. Shouting back and forth is not going to get us through question period. Now, before the Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil gets up to ask a question, I just want to remind everyone that I'm sure whoever he's pointing the question to will want to hear it, and he wants to hear the answer. So just try to maybe not shout at each other across the floor. The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Not sure they're going to want to hear this one. The Liberals are reportedly giving $18 million tax dollars to build an exclusive airport runway near Cabot Cliffs Golf Course in Cape Breton, even though the Port Hawkesbury Airport is only an hour away. Many in the community, including the mayor, are concerned this would bankrupt the company that run their community airport and the small businesses who depend on it. Instead of pandering to millionaires who, God forbid, have to drive an hour to get to the golf course after landing in their private jets, why is the Prime Minister putting this community asset at risk to accommodate his elite millionaire friends?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, Cape Bretoners always appreciate when somebody from Ontario sticks their nose in their business that knows nothing about it. There is a private airport in Port Hawkesbury. There are no scheduled flights into that airport. Mr. Speaker, the project in Cabot Links, has put over 700 people to work specifically there and tumbled out the unemployment rate was at 25% when I was first elected in 2000, Mr. Speaker, and what's going on the west side of the island is absolutely spectacular. And for this member to jump up and let on he knows what's going on.
The Honourable Member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, the backbone of the South Okanagan economy.
Order. If the honourable members let me know when we can continue, I'll be more than happy to go on to the next question. We're okay? You got it out? Perfect. Okay. The Honourable Member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the backbone of the South Okanagan economy is threatened. And you know by what? By federal bureaucratic barriers and red tape. There's a vital irrigation canal that is in urgent need of repair. The town of Oliver and the province of British Columbia have both made funding commitments, but they've been waiting 3 years for the federal government to step up with its share. This system is essential for 5,000 acres of orchards and vineyards. So will this government cut through the red tape and finally get this project funded?
The Honourable Minister for Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from South Okanagan, West Kootenay, for which I have enormous respect. As he knows well, he will be pleased to hear that we have invested already $300,000 in the 2 projects in the town of Oliver. In October of last year, we met with the outgoing mayor, Ron Evanis, and Chief of the Otsuyos First Nations, Clarence Louis, which my colleague attended, Mr. Speaker. The MP for South Okanagan and West Kootenay is well aware that our office has continued to engage with the new mayor and his council, and we are working tirelessly to make sure that we can invest in the town of Oliver. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to work, as we have done before, to make sure that the people of Oliver have what they deserve.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, cell phone and high-speed internet access are essential services. Yet, plan prices keep rising and reliability isn't increasing. The Liberals and the Conservatives prefer to let big telecom firms pocket billions of dollars instead of standing up for people. Mr. Speaker, can this government put people before big corporations and commit today to reducing the cost of bills and provide essential, reliable service? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to tell my colleague that since we were elected, we have had a priority in terms of accessibility, competitiveness, and fair costs. Costs went down by 32%, and we established a new program called Connected Families so that low-income families can have access to internet for $10 a month. Our priority is Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Our platform's working, and we're investing in people.
For Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, thousands of Canadian organizations offering kids camps and helping out seniors were ineligible for Canada Summer Jobs because of the Liberals' values test. But now, these Liberals decide to fund a group that has terrorist links, a group that paid $550,000 in fines and lost their charitable status from CRA. Yesterday, this minister said she would review the decision. Can the minister confirm that this group with terrorist links does not meet the Liberals' values test?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Employment.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, and we unequivocally condemn violent extremism and any kind of behavior such as that is not tolerated, and I know that my colleague across the way understands that and shares that view. ESDC is conducting a review into this matter in conjunction with Service Canada Ontario. They've been on site. The organization's approved for funding must adhere to specific terms and conditions, and we await the outcome of that review.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Etchemin-Lévis. No results, Mr. Speaker. The Islamic Society of North America lost its status as a charitable organization over a year ago, and we denounced the situation, Mr. Speaker, and yet we have nothing but lip service from the Liberals. They gave $25,000 to an entity linked to terrorist activities, either indirectly or indirectly. When will they revoke these subsidies to an entity that does not represent Canadian values?
Secretary.
And Mr. Speaker, the honourable member across would know he's been involved in this program for a number of years, and they know how the money rolls out with this. There is a review. The officials are working on this review right now, and we await that review. And certainly, if anything is out of the ordinary, there will be no money flowing.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Riverbend.
This is a group that funded terrorism. Just revoked the grant.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister put a values test on the summer jobs program, targeting groups that didn't agree with him. Fast forward to this week, we find out this government gave $25,000 to an organization that funded terrorism overseas. Now he says he's checking to see if the organization meets the terms and conditions of the summer jobs program. Mr. Speaker, I think this government is the one that needs to check their values. So again, just revoke the grant.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, pending the outcome of the review, there will be action taken by this government. But I'm amazed at their newfound interest in summer grants and summer students, because what they wanted to do when they were in power, they wanted to cut the program out altogether. The member from Carleton, $24 million he cut out of the youth employment strategy, Mr. Speaker. They're letting on now that they care about summer students. They're letting on now that they care about this program. Mr. Speaker, this is a party of action. This is a government of action, and we'll take the appropriate action.
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Agincourt.
Mr. Speaker, Scarborough Agincourt residents are concerned that women continue to work in part-time and precarious jobs with little opportunity to advance in their careers. My constituents desire equality and economic security for all Canadians, no matter what gender. Can the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Women and Gender Equality please share with the House some of the work that is being done to ensure that we are working to improve the economic security and prosperity of women?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member from Scarborough Agincourt for her question and her tireless advocacy. Mr. Speaker, our government is focused on gender equality and economic security by creating the Canada Child Benefit, by creating 40,000 childcare spaces, by supporting women in STEM and the skilled trades, and by ensuring equal pay for work of equal value. Mr. Speaker, with 1 million jobs, Mr. Speaker, and historically low unemployment, Canadians see real progress towards gender equality and economic security for the women of Canada.
Hear, hear. Good news.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, Oshawa's port is an economic driver for my community. Now, the Liberals ignored the GM plant closure, and now they're trying to take away our right to manage our own port. The Minister of Transport actually claimed that this is going to be good for Oshawa, but now he's trying to impose a management board that will likely have zero representation from the people of Oshawa. That's right, Mr. Speaker, zero say in the management of our own port. But this is what happens when you don't have any meaningful consultations. So, Mr. Speaker, my ask is this: when will these top-down Liberals actually and finally listen to local stakeholders and commit to having local representation on this board?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Speaker, our government has announced the intent to amalgamate the Oshawa and Hamilton Port Authorities. Both ports play an important role in Southern Ontario by linking our businesses to global markets and by providing jobs to middle-class families. The integration will also enable ongoing growth in both ports. It is anticipated that the action would unlock greater economic opportunities for working Canadians. A greater combined strength, the new Port Authority would be in a better position to make investments in port facilities and intermodal connections in Southern Ontario. And of course, we consult with our partners, we work with our municipalities, we work with our partners in ports to ensure the economic success for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
It's Kitchener South. Okay, very good. The honourable member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
Earlier this week, the member from Milton was forced to delete a tweet that suggested that there is no link between climate change and extreme weather patterns, completely disregarding science that shows climate change is real. This is so predictable considering the 10 years of Harper Conservatives cuts and the muzzling of scientists resulting in scientists protesting the death of evidence of Parliament Hill. Can the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Science and Sports please explain the importance of science and evidence-based decision-making?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Kitchener South Hespeler for that important question. Mr. Speaker, Conservative members should be ashamed of their climate change denying comments. They have chosen to broadcast false, irresponsible viewpoints, disregarding the science and not listening to the evidence once again. Our government believes that science plays a central role in building a thriving, clean economy, and we will take no lessons from the Conservatives who for 10 years refused to take action. We are the government that has invested over $10 billion in science and will always support our students and researchers. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are very concerned about the escalating violence against Christians in Nigeria, and about this Liberal government's decision to close the Office of Religious Freedom at a time when it was effectively working in Nigeria. The former Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs said that the office had, quote, successfully developed a community-based mechanism to help diffuse tensions between different religious and ethnic groups, including Christians and Muslims, end of quote. So, Mr. Speaker, why did the Liberal government close an office which they knew was effectively reducing violence and deaths?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, let me be very clear. Our government has put human rights, including the right of all people to freely practice their religion, at the center of our foreign policy. We are very clear that we are living in a time when people around the world and in Canada are facing increased attacks for their religious beliefs. That is absolutely wrong. That includes Christians, it includes Muslims, it includes Jews. and our government is very clear in condemning these acts, in working to prevent them in Canada, and in working to prevent them around the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, the cost of medicines in Canada is amongst the highest in the world. The situation should have changed, though. The Patented Medicine Price Review Board updated its reference country list used for establishing prices. This new regulation should have been in place since January 1st, but the government still hasn't adopted it yet. Big Pharma is lobbying, and the government is caving in. Does the government still plan to adopt this regulation, and if so, when? The Honourable Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, we're committed to make sure that we have everything in place to reduce drug costs. The Pan-Canadian Association allowed us to work with provinces and territories to buy medicines together, and we've saved millions. We have to modernize regulations for medications, and changes will be announced soon. Thank you. The honourable member for Joliette. Yes, I have some doubts after this answer. The minister said she's doing everything she can, and the government's doing everything it can to lower drug costs. We have a regulation that's supposed to be in effect since January, and it's still not in effect. The cost of drugs is still too high, and the regulation would have saved $12.7 billion. If I understand correctly, what she suggested in her answer is that the government is bowing down to drug companies. So I'd ask the government to confirm, to come clean and say whether it'll adopt this regulation or not. The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Once again, I'll repeat, we're determined to do everything we can to make sure we lower drug costs. We want to move forward with a national pharma plan, and we have to do what we have to do to lower drug costs. We worked on this. We have a Pan-Canadian Association that allows us to save millions. We also have modernized drug regulations. And once again, as I said earlier, we're going to make an announcement soon about these changes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In defense of their indefensible cuts to the Auditor General's budget, the Liberals keep relying on cuts made under the Harper government. As the one who implemented those budget reductions as the Treasury Board President, I can tell the House that I received prior written assurances from the Auditor General that those budget reductions would not impact any of his operations or investigations. Why didn't the current government seek similar assurances before making their cuts?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I can only imagine how that conversation went after they fired Linda Keane, after they've reduced the budget for the Parliamentary Budget Officer at the time. I imagine the conversation must have meant something, yes, boss, we're okay with what you give us. That's really not acceptable, Mr. Speaker. What's really important is that public servants under the Harper government felt intimidated, they felt cowed, and some of them lost their jobs rather for having stood up to give truth to power. So, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you one thing, we do not have to take any lessons from the Harper Conservatives about how to treat our public servants with respect.
Good job. The Honourable Member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm astounded to learn that this government thinks it can use Article 6 of the Paris Accord to earn carbon credits for exporting fracked gas to Asian markets. Does the government not realize that fracked gas has the same carbon footprint as coal? When will the government have the political courage to take responsibility for its international obligations and reduce the emissions of the oil and gas industry in Canada? When will the government ban the climate-destroying practice of gas fracking?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment.
Mr. Speaker, while I'm aware of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, given that our government was key in facilitating the negotiation of that agreement, our plan to reduce emissions is not just to displace global emissions by producing more and more oil and gas products in Canada, but actually to reduce our consumption in Canada as well. We're doing so through over 50 measures, including putting a price on pollution, moving towards 90% of our electricity generated from non-emitting resources by 2030, making the largest investment in public transit, record investments in efficiency and green technology, and others. I'd be happy to walk the honourable member through it, and I'm curious as to what the Conservatives' plan will be, because their signal is that they're going to produce more in order to reduce our emissions, and it simply makes no sense.
That's it for today. That's the end of question period. Point of order, the honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I understand that things do get heated in this House of Commons, and the member from Cape Breton-Canso, who I have respect for, showed indignation that a member from Ontario would dare ask a question about Cape Breton and stand up for those residents. I'll remind the member as well that the Minister of HoC is from Ontario. So if the member would like to apologize to me, I will accept that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Canso.
Member across a friend, and if his feelings were hurt, Mr. Speaker, I certainly want to apologize. But he is right. The minister is from Ontario and has done a tremendous job working with the people of Cape Breton to provide opportunities, and I look forward to continuing that relationship.
Un appel au règlement, l'honorable.
A point of order, the honourable member for Louis Sandahan. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With joy, I think that you will find unanimous consent for the following document about greenhouse gas emissions in 2016 and their evolution since it's a document based on science.